Hey y'all, welcome back to Gadfly, the podcast about third parties, French candidates, and just generally weird American election history. I'm Dusty Wilson.
I'm Una O'Leary.
And man, we're still at home. Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no. Una, have you discovered any sort of new weirdness to occupy your time since we last talked?
So here's the thing is that I gave up drinking at the start of the year and I still haven't gone back to it because I realized at this point it's that's all I would be doing just out of sheer boredom. Bored drinking red wine. So what have I done? Started watching Mrs. America yesterday. I've cleared through 2 different Icelandic crime dramas of 3 seasons in total. Basically if there's a dead body and subtitles, I am there. That's my TV viewing pleasure.
I just started watching McMillions on Hulu now that HBO is free. Look, if you give me a crime documentary, the people I love the most are quirky FBI agents, lawyers, and just generally sweet people. And the documentary is chock full of it. It's just just all the best characters from a Netflix documentary shoved into one.
Yeah, I still have not gotten into Tiger King again because I just worry about the big cats.
Yeah, it's not great. The documentary is really, really good. And it's really well shot, but there's maybe 4 likable people in the whole thing.
All right, I'm gonna give you a warning on McMillions having mainline that. A similar thing happens with McMillions. It you're chugging along, it's hilarious, and then it takes a turn into the real.
Oh no, yeah, I hit the point where it's just painfully sad now, where it's just I just keep hoping that the FBI is gonna be all right, we'll get a couple of people, and everyone else, don't worry about it. You're fine. But but that's not how the FBI works. So I know they're screwed.
It's why they're so rarely the good guys in any
history's
movie.
Good guys, the FBI, always telling people, hey, it's cool. I get it. But it's been a trip. So
man, I will this is not. It's partly a bit how much I've gotten into Icelandic crime dramas and the fact that there's more than one. But I will say, if you're looking for some crime drama-y filler, Trapped on Amazon Prime is delightful. 2 seasons, and I find the Icelandic language very calming. So, and then as well, it's Iceland, so you have built-in gender parity. they're blowing up the Bechdel test left and right.
Oh, that's awesome. But I imagine anytime there's a crime in Iceland, they're well, we have to make a show about this now because we have 6 crimes.
Yes, and I think that's the other thing that why I love Scandi dramas is because the dramas center around the fact that the writer's just everyone thinks that our lives are so perfect and everything's so taken care of, but there's a hidden darkness. It's your hidden darkness is so cute. This is just so sweet. In Valhalla, which is on Netflix, one of
I'm real curious about that one.
Yeah, definitely watch it. It's so good. And then several episodes in, the someone's trapped and the main character definitely needs to use a gun, and so she's calling the main police force headquarters and it's just I need the code to the safety locks box in my trunk, and they're is it an emergency? She's yes, it's an emergency. I definitely need the code. And then afterwards, part of the the next episode, part of the plot is her going under investigation of did you actually need to use that gun? And it's what world is this? What? Where am I? This is so Looney Tunes.
Episode 6 required paperwork.
Basically. Oh, it's just it's delightful for your own sanity to just sit there and really think about how you've been brought up in your own culture, where you're just they're running into a dark forest with nothing but flashlights. The fuck are they doing? Where's the AK-47?
So this episode of Gadfly brought to you by Iceland. Iceland, please move here.
It's just really better.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think it's...
transhumanism.
Yeah, let's just talk about, transcendental meditation. But yeah, as a bit of a summary from the last episode, it was pretty much a prequel. The Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and how he founded the transcendental meditation movement. He very quickly turned into a starfucker, introduced the Beatles to it, the Beach Boys, multiple other rock bands and actors and people. Started his own university that's going to play very heavily for the rest of this, called the Maharishi International University. And a number of people have been questioning whether or not the movement is a cult or not. And in the grand scheme of cults, no, they're not killing people, and they're not ultra secretive. But, I'm gonna leave that up to everyone else to decide what you think.
But yeah, also, why is your bar so low?
Wait, why is my bar of what counts as a cult so low, or why are my expectations so low?
Why are our you're right. Why are our expectations for cults so high? Rather, unless they're killing people, they're not a cult. That's terrible. That's wrong.
True. I mean, I do listen to a podcast called Let's Talk About Sects, which the title is the funniest thing about the podcast. Everything else is just incredibly serious and very well researched. And I think that's also kind of given me the idea of a cult. Terrible things are happening everywhere, not just, we live together, we do some weird stuff, we believe things that are clearly not true, but everyone's fine.
So listeners were not aware of my political leanings. I do not subscribe to conspiracy theories. I think because I think they're just a waste of time, and they're usually not crazy enough for me to find them enjoyable. But I do subscribe to the new theory that the current Republican Party is actually a death cult.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more than clear. So,
that makes sense. But if you try to talk to me about fluoride in the water, I will walk away. Stop it. Just stop.
Yeah. So on the range of a bunch of people going out into the woods and making their own Stonehenge and then going home to death cult. TM's probably a lot closer than a bunch of Karens going into the woods. So that's where we left off last time. Now we hear Gadfly are as American as Monster Trucks and Kid Rock mixtapes.
100%.
But the Natural Law Party cannot be contained by borders. When Maharishi Mahesh Yogi started the party in 1992, he saw it reaching worldwide notoriety. So in March of 1992, Mahesh founded the party right where his international fame really took off, the United Kingdom. The party published a manifesto on their early 90s website, a very troubling sentence no matter any reason or the group behind it. And to be fair, manifesto is just what Britain calls political parties' platforms, but it's America has a very weird history with manifestos. And
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Britain, that's on you.
Yeah. And their British manifesto stated the 5 pillars of their party. 1. The development of each individual's consciousness through the Transcendental Meditation and TN City program. 2. Reduce healthcare costs by training the citizens in personal health assessment via self-pulse reading, an aspect of the Maharishi Vedic approach to health. Now this already has so much to unpack. So first off, self-pulse reading is a very old practice that claims that you can discern someone's internal health just from reading someone's pulse.
I will say, as I'm hearing this, I'm realizing it's I have probably chronically low blood pressure. And it's one of those things where it's well, that would just be terrible for me because I have a low blood pressure. And then I realized that I also am on SSRIs. So really, maybe they're not totally off because they'll be man, this is a really weak pulse. And you're yeah, sometimes I just don't have the will to get out of bed.
Yeah. Well, it's not so much that your blood pressure is a little low or a little high. It's your blood pressure is low, your lungs will explode.
Okay.
We know the health of your organs. We know if you are pregnant or not. We know if you have cancer. All it takes is we're going to read your pulse and we know everything.
Right. Bring back phrenology.
Oh my God. Do not tempt them. So we also have to bring up a little bit about what they mean by the Maharishi Vedic approach to health. So this was created in the 80s by the Maharishi and stresses the role of consciousness and positive emotions to aid in public health. Which, yeah, if you emotionally feel better, you're probably going to be treating your body better and things like that. I think that falls in line of if you are, say, if you suffer from depression or seasonal affective disorder, and someone just walks up to you and says, hey, smile more. It kind of fits within that in my mindset. But the part where they really got in trouble in Britain with this is they tried to use it to treat HIV and AIDS.
Oh boy.
And they got a massive rebuke from the British government saying to knock this the fuck off.
Good for the British government. I feel like we would not have that in the States.
Oh, no. I mean, it's Alex Jones just barely isn't allowed to sell nano silver and zinc.
Barely.
Yeah. Pillar 3. Maintaining the collective health of the country by creating groups of experts in the TM City program yogic flying technique. So a bit of a callback to the last episode. The idea behind yogic flying is that once you become enlightened enough, you can meditate and float or fly. But until that point, what you do when you meditate is you can kind of hop on your crossed legs. And if you do this enough with enough people, they believe it creates a thing called the Maharishi effect, which is capable of reducing crime, improving crops, and once again, has been proven repeatedly to be complete bullshit. Pillar 4, bringing the individual and the country into tune with natural law so that unfavorable planetary influences are neutralized.
Yeah, fuck you, Mercury in retrograde.
We have launched a nuke at Mercury. And 5, assuring that the country's work and home environments support health and happiness. Which, I'm a little pissed off they waited till 5 to say the one that made sense.
The one that would actually be beneficial.
You lead with that.
Yeah.
I don't know who decided the order of this, but goddamn.
Lull me into complacency with that one.
Yeah. Now, Una, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this manifesto?
Oh boy. Well, probably a 5 because there are only 5 points.
I mean, that's a fair rating. That's pretty good. That's why Ted Kaczynski's manifesto gets a 1,092.
Jesus.
To make things even more challenging, the British Natural Law Party would only have 3 weeks to go from brand new to election day in the 92 general election. And Maharishi swung big for the party's debut and directly asked Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr to run for members of parliament for Liverpool. All 3 said no, but Harrison did perform a fundraising concert for the party 3 days before the election, which was Harrison's first full concert in the UK since 1969.
George.
Also, 3 days before the election seems like a really... like you're not going to get much done. Yeah. I don't know how much ad space you can get in 3 days, but who knows? I'm not a part of that world.
2016 is taught us anything, you need at least 11 days.
Yeah. So the party would take full advantage of a British electoral law that allows any citizen of a Commonwealth country to run for parliament. So this would include 54 countries and territories that were formerly part of the British Empire and have agreed to membership in this particular group. It's more of like a ceremonial sort of thing nowadays. You can get invited to like their own version of the Olympics. It's kind of just Britain's way of holding on to the past. After not having much luck finding local candidates, the UK Natural Law Party began filling a majority of their races with Commonwealth candidates, including magician Doug Henning from Canada.
Ooh, a magician from Canada?
I know, it's...
Wow.
Is this your card? No? Sorry.
God. What could possibly be less of any woman's dream?
By election day, the Natural Law Party had enough candidates to run in 310 out of the 651 seats in the parliament, the 4th most candidates of all the parties, ranking behind only the 3 major parties of the United Kingdom. For their first ever race, the NLP had spent nearly £1 million. And quick fun fact, in Britain, all candidates who run for parliament have to pay a £500 deposit to run. But if you get more than 5% of the vote, you get your deposit back. So a little over 15% of the Natural Law Party's budget were just deposits to run.
Jesus.
But hey, you have the surviving Beatles supporting you. How hard could it be to just get 5%? Turns out, very hard. Of all 310 candidates, none of them hit 5%. In fact, despite having the 4th highest number of candidates, the party would finish 13th with 0.19% of the vote.
God.
They finished behind all the major parties, all the major regional parties, and a dying version of the former Liberal Party as well.
Oh.
It was a catastrophically bad showing and a complete embarrassment. But you don't have time to linger on such things. It's time to go to America. It's time to jumpstart this where it's gonna happen. This is where my university is. I own a town in Iowa. We're gonna make this work. So on April 22nd of 1992, the American version of the Natural Law Party was founded by Maharishi University of Management President Bevan Morris. And the party set about its focus on the 92 election only 6.5 months away. However, instead of the Maharishi and his teachings being the forefront of the party like it was in the UK, the American Party flat out said the party had no direct connection with the Maharishi, the TM movement, or the university.
I get the sense that they should have done the opposite strategy in each country, like no connection to the Maharishi in the UK, all connection to the Maharishi in the USA.
It is where his fame lasted the longest. So yeah, that would have probably made a lot more sense.
Again, we have a current sitting president with his own bullshit university. We're not again it.
You're right. The Maharishi was before his time.
Yeah.
So the New York Daily News would just immediately call bullshit on that, calling the party just another front group for the TM movement. But it was clear the American version was wanting to lead with the image of being an alternative to the two-party system, and then later follow up with how transcendental meditation is a solution of all the country's problems. But the American Natural Law Party needed a face for their movement. So in line with proving they had no direct affiliation with the Maharishi University, they selected 37-year-old physics professor of Maharishi University, John Hagelin, to be the party's first ever nominee for president. Researching John Hagelin's early life offers a lot of the same challenges as it does when looking into the Maharishi. All of what is out there before John graduated college relies entirely on either his own recollections or through sources that are run by the Transcendental Meditation movement.
Can't be good.
No, it's going to be very truthful. To make matters worse, there's a ton of physics-based info, which, if my B- on my best day's knowledge of science is any indication, will make understanding a lot of Hagelin's genuine achievements really hard to understand.
Oh boy. All right, lay it on me.
All right. So John Hagelin was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1954 to a schoolteacher mother and a businessman father. The family would move to Connecticut, where John would be raised and pick up his notable New Englander accent. After the 8th grade, John was offered a scholarship to attend the Taft School, a private boarding school in Watertown, Connecticut. To give you an idea of how big and fancy of a deal this is, Taft is a school that offers 200 academic courses, has its own 18-hole golf course, 16 tennis courts, 8 squash courts, 2 hockey rinks, 1 Olympic and 1 NHL size naturally, and students receive an average score of 1305 on the SATs.
Boo! I hate all of this.
Public school.
Learn to shiv, motherfucker.
Oh my god, my school can beat up your school. The only stories of John attending Taft seem to be reported by the Iowa Source. Quote, Iowa's only free monthly arts and entertainment magazine. It also happens to be run entirely by the Transcendental Meditation movement, so there might be a few details that should be taken with a huge grain of salt. One of which is that after arriving at Taft, John's teachers had him take an IQ test, which he maxed out with 165. The school offered him the opportunity to take other tests to see how high his score would be, but Hagelin's parents declined.
I'm already hating everything. This is, first of all...
He's a super genius.
No, because this has all the markings of garbage, hero's journey storytelling that is fed to small children's and or is written in the Bible. Yes, and then when he was 6, he grew to 10 feet tall and laid waste to 18,000 men. And then he had a sandwich. And then he
I love the book of Sandwich.
Nothing makes sense, and the actual important things get glossed over.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean take more tests? Also, none of this has any credibility, and I don't care about the main character.
Yeah.
At
also,
all.
bragging about IQ test is one of the dumbest things out there, because an IQ test doesn't test if you're a constant genius. It tests if you're a genius at your age. And even then, there's a lot of questions about whether or not IQ tests are naturally aligned towards white people.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm sure that wasn't much of a worry for, the Taft School in the 60s, but still.
Mr. Connecticut over here.
Yeah. And to be fair, that's not to say that John isn't ridiculously intelligent. He knows a lot of things that if I even tried to figure out, I would die. It's impossible math, and he is very, very smart. But anytime I hear that someone maxed out their IQ and it comes from a source that's heavily biased, to me it's like a hero's journey, or just like, oh, this is Kim Jong-il's baby story.
Right. Like if I don't know, if I wanted to read about Gilgamesh, I would just do that. But in the meantime, like my hand is twitching because I'm trying not to make the wanking motion because it doesn't matter because people are listening to this.
Exactly. So while at Taft, John was also considered a daredevil.
God damn.
So this story, I've been trying to picture it in my head. And every time I picture it, all I could see is someone breaking their entire body and dying. Apparently, one of the things that John used to do is at a certain time of day, the dorm clock outside of the building that he lived in, he would be able to grab one of the clock handles or arms, use that to hoist himself onto the roof, and then he would just dance on the roof of the dorm. I don't know, like, are gears that strong? If you're doing this to a machine repeatedly, does it not eventually break?
If you're that far up, you couldn't just scale the rest of the wall?
No, it made it sound like he pulled some fucking Uncharted, Keanu Reeves, John Wick bullshit, where he grabs it, flings himself up onto the roof that's at like a 45-degree angle, and fucking skanks to Real Big Fish, and everyone fucking loves it.
So on top of maxing out an IQ test and John wicking his body onto a roof, he is also the source material for Footloose.
So the thing is, this daring spirit of his would lead to an accident that would completely change his life.
Dum dum dum.
Hero's journey. At the age of 16, John was involved in a motorcycle accident that left him in a body cast. He stayed for quite some time in the school infirmary, where one of his teachers gave him a book on quantum mechanics to keep him from becoming bored.
Wanking motion.
Yep. No. You know how it is when you're 16. You just want quantum mechanics, bruh. So this would be the moment that John Hagelin would become obsessed with discovering the solution to unified field theory, or the theory of everything. Yeah, so the general gist, or the most basic description of this, is that Einstein believed there to be a way to prove that all physics were interconnected throughout the universe, no matter how small or large the matter, or how difficult to measure in some regards, like time or gravity or things like that. The problem is, the smaller matter gets, the harder it is to fit within existing theories, and time also has a habit of not giving a fuck about our understanding of physics. So since then, a unified theory has been the holy grail of the science world. The thing, though, is that wasn't the only reading material available to John while he was being kept together via plaster. The table next to him in his infirmary bed also included books on yoga and ancient philosophies.
How is he reading all of this if he's in a total body cast?
I don't know. I was like, does he just ask a doctor to please put a book on his lap, and then every minute he's like, please turn? Or he's got like a spoon that he uses to turn the pages?
All right. Fine.
Quit poking holes in the hero journey. So this primed John quite well for when Rick Archer, a teacher of transcendental meditation, entered the infirmary to visit John. Archer had been invited to the school to teach TM to the students, and he offered to teach John, which John quickly agreed to. After learning to meditate, John stated, "I noticed an immediate and dramatic improvement in the clarity of my thinking and perception." And his family noted that Hagelin was dealing with his medical confinement a lot better than he had before. John also seemed to allude that he gained a clairvoyant power, and that he knew who was coming to visit him in the infirmary before they even arrived.
People have aftershaves. You could
Floppy
also
foots.
be making it. You could be making it up.
Yeah, we often forget that part of the hero's journey. So once John's body healed, he got back to in-class book learning. He did exceptionally well and earned a scholarship to Dartmouth. Funny enough, his college roommate happened to also be an official teacher of transcendental meditation, and the two would end up joining the Dartmouth TM Club. After his freshman year, John traveled to France to study transcendental meditation, and upon returning to the States, had also become an official teacher of transcendental meditation. Within 3 years, John would attain his bachelor's degree in physics, graduating summa cum laude. He followed that up with a scholarship to get his master's degree at Harvard. Friends of Hagelin's told the Iowa Source that they would often see John studying physics for periods of 8 hours, with only a glass of water to satiate himself. If they had said coffee instead of water, I would view this as normal grad school behavior, but the water detail makes it sound a lot weirder than it probably is.
Yep.
This just sounds like higher being shit.
Well, and it also, again, the fact that you can't back up any of these sources, that's super weird in today's time. But then too, it's just you couldn't stop at believable. No, you had to go that extra bit and say a glass of water.
Yeah.
Again, a cup of coffee. Boom, now we're in grad school. Now it's okay, you know what? I might be on board, but no.
Yeah. On attending Harvard, John would state, "It became clear that answers to major questions just weren't forthcoming. Physics seemed to have little understanding of the makeup of quantum fields and no idea of the origin or nature of consciousness." He would state that he found a lot more satisfactory answers to these things in Vedic science. Now, Vedic science is the closest correlation I think we could make would be Christian Science, that it is scientific thought based off of the Vedas, which are Hindu scriptures. It would take a year for John to get his master's degree because, he's up for 8 hours just drinking one glass of water. And he stayed at Harvard for another 5 years to attain his doctorate in physics, focusing primarily on particle theory. After graduation, John was offered a job at CERN, which nowadays is known for hosting the Large Hadron Collider. It's the place you go in popular culture to learn all the modern-day physics and science.
It's the Harvard of popular science physics.
I'm also starting to notice the number of Gadfly candidates that we have who went to Harvard is getting a little disconcerting. So while at CERN, John traveled to Seelisberg, which was where the Maharishi had his headquarters at the time. The two would become close and meet multiple times before Hagelin's one-year tenure at CERN ended. The next year, John moved back to the States and worked at SLAC, which is essentially Stanford's version of CERN. However, John would shortly leave that job due to mysterious personal reasons. Some articles even claiming that Hagelin had just vanished one day and never come to work.
He was right there.
Perhaps John was the friends we made along the way.
You see 2 sets of footprints walking toward the Hadron Collider. Know that I am with you.
So, people saying that he just vanished is a bit over the top and is probably just some TM-sourced flourish to kind of talk about his next stage in life. Because the following year, Hagelin would co-author a pair of very influential papers in Physics Letters B and Nuclear Physics B, which are apparently journals of science. Both would end up being cited multiple times in various future studies. His paper that he wrote, Nuclear Physics B, has actually been cited in over 500 papers as of 2007. After the success of those papers, John would go on to a new job, one that his fellow physicists wouldn't exactly be very jazzed about. Hagelin's Harvard mentor, Howard George, would even state, "I tried to talk him out of it, but he continued to do good physics anyway." And the job he took was the head of the physics department at Maharishi International University in Fairfield, Iowa.
Lateral move at best.
Oh my god. So this would suddenly give a university that had spent most of its time videotaping lectures and showing them to their students a sudden amount of huge credibility. And even more when Hagelin and 3 of his other non-TM cohorts began developing their own unified theory of everything. So as I mentioned before, I don't really have a good knowledge of science. So when I say that I have no clue what their theory is even saying, that is about as much of an understatement as I could possibly give. They dubbed their theory flipped SU parentheses 5. And I have no clue what it means or says, but I've seen the math and it hurts. And people consider it to be one of the better theories out there for a unified theory of everything.
Okay, but who are these people? Who?
Actual physicists, actual people in the business of physics.
All right. At this point, I don't believe John Hale actually ever existed. I'm going to level with you, Dusty.
John Hagelin burned
I-
down 20 years ago.
I think like Christ, he's just an amalgamation of a bunch of people, and it just made more sense to make it one person. So just to keep the story going. Did he go to, did we check Dartmouth's records? I'm at that point right now.
You're about to get it more. Like the amount of times I almost just up and called people and then had to remember that no one's at work.
Oh, it's just so convenient.
I know, right? John Hagelin used his mind powers to make me do an episode now, and especially to do this episode 1 week late.
There is no John Hagelin, and or we are all John Hagelin. All right? Just fine, continue.
This is the Gadfly unified field theory, where we're all just John Hagelin. Yeah, so he and his compatriots, Dimitri Nanopoulos, Ignatios Antoniadis, and John Ellis, all very respected physicists, began working on
real
this.
people.
Yeah, actual real people began working on this theory back in 1984. So while they were working on this theory, John kind of split to tweak it on his own with his own ideas. And in 1987, John Hagelin had embarked on his own unified field theory. Only this time, he felt like he had discovered the key that unlocked everything. He posited that every theory before was wrong because none of them took into consideration the effect of human consciousness on physics. Hagelin would state that during transcendental meditation, people would reach a state of, quote, in which the observer, the process of observation, and the observed are unified, which he described as the basic experience of the unified field theory. In the Iowa source's words, the clear and electric implication, any human being can experience and harness the unified field. In a critique of Hagelin's new theory, the physics journal Social Forces notes that John relied upon the Vedas, numerology, and at times, general coincidence to prove his points.
AKA not science.
Nope. In conclusion, the journal called this unified theory a, quote, far-fetched explanation that lacks purpose.
Bird.
Yeah, that's about as mean as journals get. Now, as I said before, science is not my strong suit. So I reached out to a friend of mine who is a physicist and data scientist by the name of Dan Fiorino. I wanted to ask him if John's human mind theory was as crackpot as others state it is. To which Dan gave me a two-step test on whether or not a unified theory is good or not. Did they mention something about the human mind? Did the person mention how this can help you in everyday life? If yes for or either, then yeah, the theory is immediately bullshit. As Fiorino puts it, the trouble with human mind people is that some of them are actually physicists who know the math, but have descended into madness because they can't accept the fact that they have stuffed their brain with information that has no practical use. I would too, and almost have many times.
God bless.
This would become John Hagelin's life purpose, to combine the teachings of his guru and the single theory that runs the entire universe. In 1987 and 89, Hagelin would publish 2 papers in the Journal of Modern Science and Vedic Science, in which he would claim that superstring theory's unified field and the Maharishi's theory of the unified self of consciousness were actually the exact same thing. Also, never mind the fact that the journal he published in was entirely owned and run by the Maharishi University of Management, the new name for the Maharishi International University.
Just stick management in there.
Yeah, that's not to say that John had completely abandoned flipped SU parentheses 5. If anything, he still believed in it, but just viewed human consciousness as the final piece. While his 3 other contributors would, more than likely, give polite replies that couldn't be contributed as positive, negative, or words. I'm sure it was a lot of just
shrug emoji.
So his cohort would often meet up at CERN to delve deeper into their theory and spend very long days just kind of dorking out and perfecting things further and further. And by 1990, they released their findings on the scientific world. It was universally lauded, with Discover magazine going as far to claim that their work may one day become worthy of the Nobel Prize. Hagelin's human consciousness theories did not make the final draft. Which leads us to that fateful April in 1992. Prior to running for office, Hagelin admitted to having little interest in politics and being a, quote, Republican by default before the campaign. Again, as a way of proving that the Natural Law Party was not affiliated with the Maharishi University, Hagelin selected fellow Maharishi University professor Mike Tompkins as his running mate. The American version of the NLP made the focus of their campaign as a science-minded party, and stressed this on the party's first ever C-SPAN appearance on August 24th of 1992. Now, this press conference is a thing of beauty, primarily because in an hour, you get a genuinely amazing sense of what the party is about, why John Hagelin was the natural choice for a leader, and just how deeply everyone on that stage was willing to believe easily disprovable statements. The conference would end up starting late, with the feeling that they were just holding for more attendees than the dozen or so people who already made it to the National Press Club. Mike Tompkins was the opening speaker and introduced the party as such. The principle of the party is to bring the light of science into politics. And what that means is to give more support for programs that have been scientifically proven to work. We believe, on the basis of a lot of evidence, that the solutions to all of the problems of the United States already exist, and that these solutions have been extensively validated by science, and they have been tried in many, many different areas and have been shown in practice to work. Tompkins followed this up by establishing some credit and clout to the brand new party by announcing some big-name folks who were working for them and running as candidates. He mentioned a guy by the name of Kevin Connor, who was the former field director for Governor Jerry Brown's Democratic presidential primary run that year. But then things start to get a little more vague and seemingly less true.
Yes.
He alluded to, quote, advisors and supporters of 92 third-party darling Ross Perot aiding the party, but didn't get into specifics. He stated a female former Republican and Michigan state chair for the Reagan presidential campaign was running for them. Once again, he didn't give a name, but assuming this was a woman who was still living in Michigan and running for them, then this would either be Susan Normandin or Key Halverson. That being said, I can't find any connection between the two working for the Reagan campaigns in either 80 or 84. I also couldn't find anything to disprove this statement, but you would think a little name dropping in this moment might help. But then we get to the final illusion drop. Tompkins claims that one of their candidates running for Senate in Hawaii had previously run in the state's previous Democratic gubernatorial primary. This would limit the names to Benjamin Hopkins, Robert H. Garner, and Albert Marshall. None of them ran for any office in any regard in 1992, not to mention that the only parties in Hawaii that made the ballot for Senate that year were Democrats, Republicans, Greens, and Libertarians. Since the statement was made in August, long after the deadline to make it onto the ballot in any state, I'm going to call this a fucking lie, and how dare you make me do this much fucking research, Tompkins? This doesn't matter. None of this matters, but you fucking lied, and you were so fucking vague about it, and I fucking have you against the wall now.
This is nothing more than a long con to make people 8 years later just create nothing more than a yarn board. Just like
it's Pepe Sylvia all over the fucking place here. And I almost called the Reagan Library to find out who was the state campaign chair in Michigan.
But then you remember
there knows or cares.
And you remember too that no one is there right now because we're in a unprecedented pandemic.
Exactly, but we live in COVID world now, and time means nothing to me. I will use it how I wish. If these lies keep piling up, I swear I will call that library and I will find out.
I think you have to.
But of course, Mike isn't done. It's time for a lie that the NLP would use every 4 years, that they were now the third largest political party in America. Now, saying this in 96, you could make some arguments, and I will argue against them later. But saying this in 1992 is just fucking stupid. The Natural Law Party had claimed that they had made it on the ballot in 21 states. Which, yeah, you can get a lot of candidates out of that. But the fucking Libertarians are in more states than that. And they are on multiple races. They are running multiple congressional races. They are doing everything. And if we're going just by candidates, the Libertarian Party has been America's bronze winner since at least 1992. And the loophole that I think the Natural Law Party is using for this fucking lie is that, as John Hagelin would later state, was that the party didn't require anyone to actually join or leave their previous party affiliation. In this regard, Democrats and Republicans could accept their endorsement, and the Natural Law Party would count that as someone running for them. But let's at least be fair and talk about their platform. The NLP was in favor of sustainable agriculture, promoting preventative medicine and national health care, shifting to a reliance on renewable energy, and shifting government spending to support services that benefit the physical and mental health of the population. And this is the sort of platform that actually got me intrigued back in 2000 when I first heard about them, because all of that sounds great.
Yeah.
A lot of it still sounds great.
Yep.
The party supported equal rights for women, people of color, and the LGBT community. The party was also pro-choice, anti-war, and incredibly vocal about cutting taxes as low as possible. In one of the more headline-grabbing stances, they also believed that all candidates should undergo a brainwave test to examine who would be most capable of thinking clearly under pressure. Now, most people took this as a joke, but apparently after they realized that the Natural Law Party was very serious, they dropped it from their platform because people were like, are you fucking kidding me?
Maybe an MRI would be great.
I mean, it couldn't hurt, but I was looking into this, and there were a lot of doctors who are just like, you can figure out a lot of things from a brain scan, but it's not going to tell you, if you just get a brain scan, it's not going to give you any actual answers. It's something that should be complementary to other things.
Yes, yeah.
It was now time for Tompkins to introduce John Hagelin, and he made certain to lift Discover Magazine's quote of John one day winning a Nobel Prize, but also mentioned a prize that Hagelin had actually won, the Kilby International Award. Tompkins referred to this award as being one of America's most respected scientific awards. The Kilby Award had been created not by a respected scientific body or a renowned university, but by the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce.
Mm.
You know, amazing scientists there in North Dallas.
Not even Dallas.
No, North Dallas. A very specific part of Dallas. South Dallas doesn't give a fuck about science.
Fort Worth, don't care.
Nope. Fort Worth is busy.
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce is trying to create business here in Fort Worth. The award had been created as a way to celebrate scientific advancement, but also to try and lure companies and people to the North Dallas area. But then we get to the good part, when John Hagelin speaks. I have to say, I can absolutely see why this is the man they chose. His voice is just kind of whimsical. It very much has a New England accent that kind of sounds like a way that people haven't spoken since the 40s. It's not like that deep Kennedy, Massachusetts, but it's sort of like that, oh, we're going to be vacationing in Newport.
Oh.
That sort of thing. And it's one of those voices that you're just like, I'll believe anything you say because it just lulls you. It's very
New England patrician.
Yeah, that's the word I was trying to figure out. Yes, New England patrician, 100%. But this is also where things start to go a touch off the rails, at least when it comes to citing of reliable evidence. The party may have begun with the goal to separate itself from the TM movement, but just like Steve Forbes and his flat tax, John Hagelin makes it very clear that the solution to every problem in America is transcendental meditation. And boy howdy, does he have some real questionable ways to back that up. For example, when discussing recidivism of prisoners, John makes a point to cite that transcendental meditation has been proven to astronomically reduce the amount of people who return to prison, pointing directly to a study done in Senegal that had dropped the rate of recidivism from 90% to 3%. The study was performed between 1987 and 1989 on 11,000 inmates. At the conclusion of the study, Colonel Mamadou Diop, the director of the Penitentiary Administration in Senegal, even stated, of the 2,390 inmates that were released, we could register less than 40 recidivists who are meditators. Considering that there is no structure or scheme for the reintegration of inmates into society, nor is there any provision for work or jobs for those released, it appears that the only possible explanation for this remarkable drop in recidivism in our country is to be found in the application of transcendental meditation. But here's the three big issues with this.
Put a pin in it. Blow it up.
One, what's the control?
Yeah.
What's the control group here? And what was the rate of recidivism for the control group? Two, is this peer-reviewed for anyone outside of transcendental meditation? Doesn't appear to be. And three, yeah, you have the numbers, but the one commandment of statistics is correlation does not prove causation.
I mean, you would have gotten your ass handed to you by my 6th grade science teacher.
Exactly.
And I know because I didn't do well in that class.
For the true believers of TM, this is the one study they need to prove themselves right. And it is something that they cling to for as long as possible. And at least according to Hagelin, folks who deny that transcendental meditation can solve the world's problems are really just purposely part of the problem. During the conference, he would flat out state that the only reasons governments haven't used transcendental meditation is because of political fear, which has led them to keep TM a secret from the people, completely ignoring the fact that whole states have sanctioned the use of transcendental meditation previously and chose, on their own, to stop.
Because it's bullshit?
Perhaps because it's bullshit. It's good to relax, and it's a good way to maybe calm, but it's not a cure-all, end-all, be-all. So over and over, Hagelin stated the Natural Law Party is all about using the best scientific findings to improve the nation, But time and time again, the best science always ended up being transcendental meditation. So after Hagelin spoke, Mike Tompkins would then return to the platform to go all in and claim the Maharishi effect had reduced crime in Washington, D.C. by half from 1982 to 1986. He also noted that violent crime had quadrupled after the yogic flyers stationed in D.C. to meditate had left. But if you're going to vote Hagelin Tompkins in November, they will resume a nationwide basis of yogic flying and reduce crime by 15%. A reporter asked Tompkins if he's saying that transcendental meditation is the only reason crime dropped in Washington, D.C., and he says yes. He doesn't even try to dance around it. He just says, yes, This is the reason.
That is finally something where it's like, you know what? Good for you. You are owning it.
It is refreshing to not have it couched in bullshit. The reporter then follows this up by asking Tompkins if he could explain the huge drop in the murder rate that year in Washington, D.C. John rebuts by saying, we would like to see the specifics, but that's not what I've heard from the city official that we spoke to, which followed to this really nice back and forth between Mike Tompkins and the reporter. The reporter asks, what city official? John Wilson? Tompkins says, I shouldn't say without asking his permission. You have to ask permission from a city official to say that you spoke to him? Isn't John Wilson the chairman of the city council? It was not John Wilson. Okay. End of discussion. And from here on out, John takes control of the mic. Mike Tompkins has fucked up. He seemed shocked and very ill-prepared for the line of questioning, that anyone would question the transcendental meditation movement, that anyone would just be this hard line to try to disprove his bullshit to his face. So John tries to cover for Mike, saying that it's all too complex for him to really be able to explain to the reporter how transcendental meditation cuts the crime rate, but cites another study where transcendental meditation yogic flyers reduced war casualties in Lebanon by 80%. He closes by saying, the phenomenon of the Maharishi effect that we're discussing is the most rigorously established and thoroughly tested of any phenomena in the history of social science. For their first televised press conference, that really the best of showings. You had a small audience, you fucked up a lot, you held your ground, but also of the 4 people who were on stage at that time, only 3 of them spoke.
Wait, who was the one not speaking?
So there was John Hagelin's wife, Margaret, was there. They asked her what she would do as first lady, and she was like, I don't know, something with health, supporting my husband. And the 4th person was their candidate for Congress in Maryland's 4th district, a fellow by the name of Chinelo Haney, who, the little bit of research I did, he seems to be a physician who focuses primarily on blood pressure, and his whole thing is using transcendental meditation to lower blood pressure, which, I mean, I think has more credibility than some of the other things they're talking about.
Yeah,
but I mean,
you also don't need to go into politics for that.
Exactly. And the thing is, I don't think he exactly planned on going into politics, because at the time he was just a write-in candidate. He hadn't even been able to qualify as an actual natural law candidate in the area. He ended up finishing the race with 47 votes, getting 0.03% of the vote in the area. But, you know, you have a write-in candidate, don't let him talk. I honestly have no idea why he was even there to begin with. So the Natural Law Party would absolutely have to make a lasting impression via in-person campaigning and advertising. The problem with the latter, though, is that according to the Baltimore Sun, by late August, the party had only been able to collect about $5,000 in small donations. But the party was hopeful that number would rise and they would be able to qualify for $4.5 million in matching federal campaign funds. And the ultimate goal for that potential $9 million was to mail their platform, along with all corresponding scientific evidence, to all 91 million homes in America. So here's the thing. John Hagelin is clearly very good at complicated and abstract math. But multiplication seems to have kind of passed him by on this one. So assuming that each packet of info only costs 1 stamp, that would cost 29 cents. To mail that to every home in America at the rate of 29 cents would cost $26.4 million. And yeah, you could probably get a bulk rate for all those mailings, but they would have to get a discount of 66% for those numbers to work with the mailers. That couldn't be any bigger than a normal-sized letter.
Also, let's talk labor costs. Let's talk overhead, rent, feeding these people who, you know, because they're not doing this for 8 hours with a glass of water.
It might be a shitty thing to assume, but I would guess that they would probably just have a lot of college students at their university in Fairfield doing it for extra credit.
But you're still buying pizza.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And you still have to buy envelopes, you still have to buy paper, you still have
Yep.
the printing costs.
Yep.
So $9 million would not have been close to enough to even do this.
Not at all.
But at least talking to people's still on the table, and Hagelin's clearly decent at it. And he even took a 6-month leave of absence from the university to run his campaign. So it's not like he was too busy to travel the country. Well, about that. When asked on his second C-SPAN appearance on where he planned to campaign next, Hagelin stated that he was at the tail end of an East Coast speaking tour, but after that, he would return to Fairfield, Iowa, surround himself with 65 of the best political minds and problem solvers, and leave it at that. He viewed the best use of his time was to think about solutions with all of these people, rather than going out and glad-handing and introducing himself to the voting population.
Well, yeah, because this is the group of people who are still somehow believing that if they just sit together and like wiggle on their knees, that it's going to reduce crime rate. So of course, just sitting on your ass with 5 other people is going to result in, I don't know, 200 electoral votes.
Now, John would show up in a couple of third-party debates, but it was pretty clear that he just didn't have any interest in traveling to get out his views. But he did get the endorsement of historic asshole and lead singer of the Beach Boys, Mike Love. Love had previously endorsed George H.W. Bush, but had decided to switch over Hagelin. The Beach Boys even did a tour that summer to try to raise money for the Natural Law Party. The problem with that is the tour occurred 2 years after the Summer in Paradise album, which is one of the worst 45 minutes ever put to vinyl. It is garbage. It took the fame they had regained from Kokomo and just took a big ol' shit on it.
This is the research I come here for.
Oh my God.
This is what I want.
And so probably not the best time to do a big tour and expect to donate a lot of money.
This is also the same group. Wait, who toured with the Maharishi originally?
Yeah, the Beach Boys.
Yeah. So they've learned nothing.
Nope.
Great.
So all in all, the Natural Law Party's presidential campaign was breaking all the rules and not coming up with any new ones to replace the old ones. Much like the yogic flyers of DC, they seemed to just sit back, and if they succeeded, then clearly it was all thanks to transcendental meditation. But in the few speaking engagements John did attend, he didn't really help himself that much. In one call-in segment at C-SPAN where John was the guest, a caller had asked him a very homophobic question about homosexuality and AIDS. John used it as an opportunity to support the LGBTQ community, calling them equal in the natural world, but then followed that up with this. I do not think AIDS is a disease that will succumb to a magic bullet approach. I don't think a pill or an injection is going to cure that disease. I think the best defense against AIDS is the intelligence of the human body. After all, people get infected with HIV. They don't manifest symptoms for many, many years. So the body already knows how to fight AIDS. Unfortunately, the immune system does wear down and the symptoms of AIDS begin. What we really need to do, I think, is research alternative methods, alternative medicines, which will promote good health and strengthen the immune system. And I think that way better increases the chances to combat the war against AIDS.
Nope.
And this kind of goes hand in hand with Marianne Williamson's AIDS theories in the 80s, where she was like, positive thought will cure AIDS. And if you have AIDS, it's because you are a negative thinker. Another thing that John Hagelin would say is that he believed that one of the greatest wastes of American resources is the fact that the nation only uses, what's the brain theory, that you only use 5% of your brain?
Yes.
And he believed that if we could get the whole nation to use 100% of our brain, then we could do so many wonderful things with transcendental meditation. Problem with that is the 5% brain theory is complete bullshit and has been disproven over and over and over again, and actually comes from not a scientific study, but from a book on philosophy in the early 1900s.
Oh boy.
This is something that I was able to research and figure out was false in 5 minutes. Fucking genius level Harvard physicist who knows how the universe works apparently can't be fucked to figure it out. So what I am saying is, Harvard, where is my scholarship?
Harvard saying, where's my building?
No, that's fair. That's fair. So I think I need to finish up at least on John Hagelin's public appearances with probably one of the worst debates I've ever seen in my life.
Wow. That's saying something.
And it's not in the fact that people said dumb things, and it's not in the fact that, I mean, one very dumb thing was said, but it's mostly the fact that it was just a complete and total shit show.
Ooh.
So it was held in DC, and it was 3 candidates were there. It was John Hagelin, Lenora Fulani, who was representing the New Alliance Party, and Howard Phillips, our old friend from the Constitution Party, but back then it was called the U.S. Taxpayers Party. Howard Phillips would also, at times he would say things where it's like, you're kind of adorable, but then he would come out and say that, one of the best ways to solve crime in the cities is to essentially allow communities to dispense their own form of justice. And if you have 2 witnesses to a crime, then you can immediately decide someone's fate in the justice, whether or not that is sending them to jail all the way to the death penalty.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
No. Oh.
Smaller government.
No. So it's just vigilante justice.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. That was the dumbest thing the candidates at least said. But the thing that made it such a wonderful shit show is that when it began with 11 minutes of protests. One of these days, I'm going to do an episode on Lyndon LaRouche, and it's going to probably take 2 months to do it. But the shortest cliff notes I can do on Lyndon LaRouche is that he is an anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist who, honest to God, created a cult based on his political ideology. In 1992, when this debate was taking place, he was currently in jail due to lots of fraud, and his supporters were mad that they didn't invite his vice presidential nominee to be there for the debate. So one by one, angry, weird white boys would just make these long-winded protests while security in the background was just like, what? I was told this was going to be easy. I'm not prepared to throw anyone out. And no one knew what to do. No one was willing to shut these people down. They were just letting them talk, and then in 2 minutes they would slowly push them out of the room, and then someone else would stand up. And this happened with 4 people, to the point that you can hear someone in the background just say, how many of you are there?
That is beautiful.
And by the time they finally get them to shut up and start, you would get questions occasionally. But then one of the guests was former Senator Eugene McCarthy. But instead of asking questions, Eugene would just kind of go on these long old man diatribes, not really ranting about things, but kind of telling stories and sort of couching questions in them. And candidates would be like, I'd like to reply to the question that I think was there. And Eugene would say, well, if you found a question, go ahead and reply.
Eugene was even like, oh no, I didn't ask a question.
He's literally there just, I don't know if he even respected what was going on, but he was just using it as an opportunity to try to give relevance to why he was there. It was such a hilarious, sad time. And the funny thing is, C-SPAN ran it as a rerun in 1998.
C-SPAN has reruns?
Yeah, occasionally they rerun stuff, and it was last aired again in 1998.
Oh, that's beautiful. We need to bring it back.
Oh man, I'm sure there's probably, if they had a Mystery Science Theater for politics, it would probably be for that debate. So for the inaugural year, things were a bit of a mixed bag for the Natural Law Party. Hagelin and Tompkins had only been able to get on the ballot in 28 states for a total of 264 potential electoral votes. This would be 6 fewer than needed to even win. A newspaper in Worcester, Massachusetts would run a story claiming that the Natural Law Party were running between 80 to 175 candidates in other races. But I personally find that to be pretty dubious. I'm not fully done with my spreadsheet project, but I'm up to New York as of right now in congressional races, and I only have 21 natural law candidates listed.
Yeah, so
it's not looking good. And they might be counting all of the Democrats and Republicans who took their endorsement.
They absolutely are.
I'm not going to say they're lying yet.
I will.
Yeah.
They're lying.
But you know what? John and Mike would get one final boon before Election Day. Less than a month away from voting, they got the nomination from the Natural Law Party. That's right. It took the party until October 5th to even make anything official. 400 party members traveled to Washington, D.C. and picked the 2 people who they had been running since April to be their official nominees.
Oh my God. Like, my head hurts.
It's such a waste of money. You've already decided. Why? So finally Election Day came, and the party that claimed to have the answer to every problem in America and a direct line to the universe itself finished 8th. with 0.04% of the vote.
It's still more votes than they deserve.
They had gotten fewer votes than the U.S. Taxpayers Party and the Populist Party, both of which qualified for the ballot in fewer states than the Natural Law Party had.
Amazing.
Their congressional and Senate races did not fare that much better. So their most successful candidate of the first year in America would have to be a ballroom dancer by the name of Pamela Volpone. She had run as a candidate in Arizona's deep red 3rd District. According to Pamela, she really didn't have any plans on actually winning. She'd been living in Fairfield, Iowa, and had only visited Arizona once in the previous year on a whim. She had zero connections to the state, and when she was asked to run there, she said yeah. And so she just moved to Prescott, Arizona, and just kind of dove in.
Amazing.
She's described as having just a boisterous laugh, a really big personality, just kind of a fun person. Pamela said of the race, it was clear it was more for the purpose of injecting positivity into the whole political process. She dove into a multitude of interviews, took part in all the debates, and even struck up a strong friendship with the GOP incumbent Bob Stump. Despite not expecting to win, she put in a ton of effort and had the best result of any Natural Law Party candidate with 4.17% of the vote.
Ooh.
And on election night, she was invited to Congressman Stump's victory party, where he presented a birthday cake to Pamela's son.
Oh.
This would be the only race that Pamela would ever run.
Great.
So for her first...
Be like Pam.
Yeah. Yay, Pam.
Good job, Pam.
Only one other candidate would get more than 4% of the vote, and it was a guy by the name of Ted Goldstein in Arizona's 1st District. I couldn't find a single thing about him. So for her first year, let's be honest, it was internationally embarrassing. The party failed in the United Kingdom, failed in the USA. Oh, and also they only got 0.06% of the vote in the 1992 Israeli elections that had been held in June, where they finished 23rd out of 25 parties. But despite all of that, the Natural Law Party wasn't done yet. Not even close. And we're going to talk about the next elections next time.
Oh my God.
Gadfly. Gadfly is a production of Added Serotonin. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at gadflypod.